9 a.m. Entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion and support. We have roll call from the county clerk, please.
Commissioner Bayer.
Present.
Commissioner Waltz.
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Duckham. Commissioner, where are we? What's his name? Pulaski. Commissioner Pulaski.
Here.
Commissioner Willis.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Commissioner Snell.
Here.
Chairman Shotwell.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Have arrived at the first opportunity for public comment. Public comment guidelines, each individual will state their name and have 3 minutes to address the board. You may only address the board once under public comment under this opportunity, and you may not yield your time to others. Board members will not debate nor answer questions at this time. Who would like to speak under public comment?
Go ahead, Mike. Mary, go first.
Good morning, Rosemary Tanner, Jackson, Michigan. Commissioners, you all received my email regarding the recent jail millage defeat and my input regarding potential public safety concerns. Those 6 who responded, thank you. Research leads me to ask the following. Number 1, diverted felons program, which the jail previously participated in, but was stopped by DOC related to the issues with the previous JSO administration. When this program was terminated, approximately $68,000 monthly was directed to the general fund. Reaching out to DOC related to this reestablishing may be worth a phone call. Chandler Road is a 252-bed facility. If memory serves me correctly, it is not one wing closed. How about considering building a female jail at a lower cost so that other counties could house inmates like Jackson County would have to do if the jail got shut down? Overcrowding doesn't only occur here. Staff it with female guards. Revenue could be generated. There are several correction programs available, as you well know. It is only a matter of when, not if, a civil rights lawsuit due to discrimination will get your attention. Lastly, as I canvassed for the millage and spoke to voters, people stated their dismay at the lack of participation from this board in the publicly supporting this millage. Perceptions are real. I myself had no answer to give them. I don't speak for you, but actions do speak louder than words. I don't need to expound any further on that. Thank you.
Dan Weimer from Napoleon Township. Well, this morning, the commission will decide whether to place a 0.25 mil operating expense proposal on the November ballot. I urge the commission not to place the 0.25 mil proposal on the ballot and instead to place the 0.9 mil public safety millage question on the ballot again. And I urge this for 3 reasons. First, it almost passed on August 6th. 24,935 people voted, and noes exceeded yeses by only 835 votes. 81,350 people voted in the November 2020 presidential election, and a similar number can be expected this November. This means more than 3 times the number who voted on the millage in August will be voting in November, at least 56,000 more people. It would not be asking the same voters the same question over again. It would be giving 56,000 more people the opportunity to participate in this important decision about the future of our jail, rather than letting 12,886 no voters in August make that decision for 81,000 plus Jackson County voters. And second, voters can be given other reasons to vote yes. Messaging up to now has been about why the jail needs more money, why the deputies need more money, why the inmates need more money. In my opinion, a stronger message is to tell voters why our community needs a new jail. The COVID pandemic was a stress test for our jail, and it failed miserably. COVID-infected inmates had to be isolated from the rest of the jail population to prevent the spread of infection to all the inmates. Incoming inmates had to also be isolated until it was certain they did not have COVID. The jail had only a small number of rooms where inmates could be isolated. The shortage of isolation rooms soon made it virtually impossible to admit new inmates. Thousands of people with outstanding warrants in Jackson County could not be arrested. These are the people who break into our cars, garages, and pole barns to steal things. When they don't go to jail for doing it, they continue doing it. Parents who are under court order to pay child support and don't make their payments can be placed on what's called pay or stay. That means they spend weekends in jail if they don't support their children. The program stopped working when the jail could no longer accept weekend inmates, and many child support payments went unpaid. Capacity to house female inmates safely was and still is insufficient. The arrival of COVID surprised and shocked most of us, but not everyone. Books had already been written warning that a global pandemic of some kind was inevitable. World population has become so interconnected that a new illness arising anywhere can soon spread everywhere. At some
10
point,
seconds.
At some point in the not-too-distant future, there'll be another global pandemic. We need a jail that can still function.
Good morning, Commissioners. All of you have received my letter, but I would just like to go on the record with some of the following. Again, my name is Amy Hawkins with Pulaski Township. My heart is very broken for our law enforcement, and I bring to you the following. In light of the recent safety millage loss, I recognize there is a heavy burden before you and your team. How do we move forward to provide the Chanter Road Jail the operating money they need? As a concerned citizen, small business owner, and grassroots leader of our community, I implore you, please do not eliminate a single dollar from the Jackson County Sheriff Department budget. As a community member, I would rather do with less things or experience delays in property improvements, for example, than ask our law enforcement to take one more blow. Please, Commissioners, you are innovative and wise. Please do not ask them to cut road patrol for the need to make up the Chanter Road deficit. There has to be another way. They are already running on fumes, and our county's success and safety cannot do with less law enforcement. If and where the government has a role to play in the aspects of our lives, I believe it is in keeping citizens safe. While I realize this is the largest budget you oversee, I ask that you continue to make it a priority, and I think the citizens of Jackson would ask that as well. The citizens of Jackson do not yet realize, but they will soon, that if you cut the county law enforcement budget, you can expect layoff of road patrol, crime to go up, response times on calls to be even longer, economy to suffer, families to move away, and a decrease of confidence, any of the potential of any future law enforcement hires, that Jackson is a worthy place to work and live. They will not believe it. The Wesley Street Jail situation is in the current scenario, if I may be so bold and courageous to say, because of decisions former county commissioners arranged years ago. I am grateful to each of you for your efforts to redeem the crisis, but I'm asking you, please do not ask our already suffering law enforcement department to bear an even greater burden because of the poor decision of your predecessors. Please help us make right for generations to come. Please find money to pull from any other area but the Sheriff Department budget. This matters immensely to our citizens, and I can give you a heads up that if this is the direction you choose to go, you will hear en masse from citizens across the county their displeasure. But I am praying for you, and I thank you very much for your thoughtful and intentional consideration of my request. Thank you.
Good morning, Brenda Humphrey, Summit Township. I also sent an email to Mr. Shotwell regarding the sad news about our millage not going through for the sheriffs. I do have a question, though, from a former prison employee who wanted me to ask you this. We don't know who to ask. When he was working there, he said cell blocks 4 and 5 have been renovated, state-of-the-art beds, empty. It still sends empty. They're paying someone to clean it. They're paying someone to go in there and flush toilets. They're paying for utilities. His question is, why are they not renting that to the sheriff's department for beds? Why is it sitting there empty? He's just wanting me to ask you, who do you go to? Who do you find out why the state is paying money for an empty building? So I would just like a response on that from someone. Thank you.
Jay Horsefall, Sandstone Township. I didn't have a planned speech or anything. I walked through the jail and it definitely needs work. It definitely needs money. But then, you know, I look at the taxes that I'm paying and it's way, way too much taxes. And, you know, you guys are asking citizens to pay, like, we've never, basically in economics, you tax citizens more than 33%, they'll be in debt forever. I'm not going further in debt. I'm not saying, you know, I'm saying you guys have an opportunity to find the money from some other places. There's way too many places where our taxes go that are not needed. So I ask you to find those places that are frivolous, that you're taking our taxes and you're giving it to all these other frivolous places. I ask you to find those places, pull the taxes, you know, get rid of those programs or whatever, and pay for the jail and the police officers. I do not want you to take any money away from the police officers either. I would like to keep the same amount of police officers that we have and keep them operating.
Good morning. John Wilson, City of Jackson. Just quickly, I'm sure we're going to hear from Mr. Overton today as to why this .25 is needed for an operating budget for a county department. All of us in this room, I'm sure, agree that Wesley Street needs to close down, and Sheriff Schutte and his staff deserve a jail upgrade up there on Channer Road. But the question this morning isn't about that. It's about operating budgets. A few years back, when you were discussing the senior millage, Mr. Overton said he eventually would like to see each county department funded through a millage. That was during the senior services millage vote, when you guys were taking that. Is there a proposed budget yet that's been made public for 25, 26? I haven't seen one yet. I'm sure you're working on it. Are you expecting to have a deficit? Because the last two budgets, general fund budgets, you had reserves, $2 million reserves, budget surpluses. Now the jail millage from the Channer Road jail millage, that is off the books now, and that's been over a year. So last year's budget did not have that millage on there, but you had a $2 million budget surplus. So are you expecting less revenue this year or higher expenses due to increased spending on all the nice stuff? Because, again, not knowing what the 25-26 budget may entail, are you expecting less from the state in revenue sharing? Are you expecting less county taxes that you collect from each and every one of us? I don't think so. You're not. So what is it? Why do all of a sudden are we, are you saying that the sheriff's patrol could be cut, the sheriff's department could be cut, their operating expenses, $1.5 million a year? when you had a $2 million budget surplus the last 2 budget cycles? And previous to that, I know what you're working on. You're working on a close to a 30% budget reserve surplus fund. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Public comment is now closed. We're at item 4, discussion of the proposed jail operations millage. I will let Administrator Controller Overton lead this out.
Thank you. It is indeed unfortunate that the millage did not pass. We do need a new jail. I think everybody who's seen it at all understands that. And frankly, just common sense. It's a 70-plus-year-old building. Nothing lasts forever, especially when the people in the building for the last 70 years don't have a lot to do other than try to figure out how to break the darn thing. So clearly the need is there. Twice now we've asked the voters, and twice they've denied spending more money on a jail. So at this point, we were like, well, we need something more for operations, because the former millage from almost 25 years ago now, had an operations element to it. It paid for the debt service on the construction of the new jail, and of course, a portion of that went for operations. Some have said, we shouldn't have in a construction bond or construction millage, I should say, an operations element. Regardless, it was there, and the county relied upon it. And it is no longer here. And to be frank, we no longer have all the monies from ARPA and all these other monies that spent us into inflation the last few years. Those monies are gone, and those are one-time monies. So, to say we have excess revenue is not correct. At the same time, we have increasing costs, because we pay inflationary costs as well. Be it healthcare, everything we buy is more. To run a police department or a sheriff's department, the same. It takes a lot of gasoline, and we all know where the gasoline prices are. So to say we somehow can spend less is not necessarily the case. It's just not as simple as that. To say that we can take it from other places, let me address that just briefly. Yes, we can make cuts in other areas, but it is not what you might think. Most of our, what I consider departments that are not mandated, let's put it that way, by law, because certain things are mandated that we do as county government. The things that are not mandated by law, we're subject to, the board's cutting and so forth. But we've gone to the voters multiple times over the years and asked the voters what are they willing to pay for those things, and they have. We pay for mental health. We have a millage. That means none of the general fund money goes there. So we can't cut mental health because none of our money already goes there as it is. The money that goes there is the money that was approved by the voters. That's also true of parks. That's true of animal shelter, right? The medical care facility. These things all have their own separate millage. These things went before the voters, and the voters determined that they value those enough to fund them. So we can't divert that money. None of those departments receive general fund dollars. The bulk of our general fund dollars is our core services. So that's basically law enforcement and the courts. The ancillary stuff, or I should say internal services, are the things like myself, IT, HR, finance, all the payroll, all those kind of things that are internal that we run. There's a few others, like we have, 2 veterans employees that cater to our veterans. That is, we could cut that, but it would be a mistake in my mind. They provide a very essential service. So while we might think that the other things that we fund are not essential, but truly, in certain people's eyes, they very much are essential. And the list goes on. We give about $400,000 to the health department from general fund. Legally, that's the minimum we can give them. And we legally have to have a health department, so I can't reduce that further. And the same is true of right on down the line. 911 has its own funding source, as you guys probably are aware. It's on our phone bills. We see it every time. It's like $1.50 a phone line. They have already exceeded their revenue source, and the general fund is subsidizing that as well, meaning your general taxes to the tune of about $400,000, excuse me. So while it's simple to say and easy to say, cut other places, there are significant consequences to reducing the budget. So it's not an easy task. Can it be done? Yes, we will get there one way or the other to balance our budget, because legally we have to. It's just that simple. As for today, in discussions with Chair and Vice Chair, we decided, you know what, we should give people an opportunity to pass an operations millage, not a construction. If the folks don't want us to build a new jail, so be it. I do believe at some point we will have to build a new jail. It's not a matter of if, really, it's not a matter of if, it's just when. I believe that's been said, and I believe that to be true. And you do too. Nothing lasts forever. It's just how things go. But that's not today at this point, based on the voters who did vote twice. That's not today. So that's why we put on 0.25. It'll generate about $1.5 million. And while right now I probably need about 1.2 based on the numbers, we have 11 union contracts in the county. They're all up this year. So right now we're engaged in union negotiations. We anticipate people are going to get a raise. It's not reasonable to expect our employees to come to work every day and not have an increase like everyone else, especially in the face of inflation. They're trying to feed their families too. So, and it's, like I say, it's a difficult situation. But at the end of the day, I think we're all dedicated to it, solving the problem and moving forward. I'll take any and all questions the board might have.
Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Bear.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we need to explore every opportunity, every possibility that we can look at. So if the administrator could just give me a short yes or no answer. The county-owned airport, the Reynolds Field, do they pay property tax? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, then one option we can look at is we can sell the airport. It doesn't have to be I don't believe it has to be a county-owned property that pays no tax. There's all kinds of businesses that buy hangars to fly airplanes out, or they buy a hangar just to have a shop to work in, and they're not paying property taxes. I would make a strong suggestion. We sell the county airport, and once it is a privately owned property, it will be taxed. So if we took Reynolds Airfield, privatized it, Administrator, you got any guess how much property tax would come off of that property?
Well, no, but to be clear, the county, the portions we own, we don't pay tax as a county government.
That's
Private property, when they have leases on their personal property and all those things, there's taxes involved in some of that. That's why, yeah. So those folks are paying taxes. It's the county, you asked me the county airport, and for the county airport, no, we're not paying taxes on that.
I think the county would receive the same benefit, whether it was a county-owned airport, and that attracted businesses and visitors to Jackson County, or if it was a privately owned airport, it would attract the same number of businesses and visitors to our county. But that would generate a lot of money in property tax. So since everything should be on the table, that's what I'm putting on the table. Let's sell the airport and start gaining property tax. Other issues, we've got different departments that have programs that are funded, and monies are spent on projects. Projects to, I don't know, did I say something that was funny that you were laughing about? We have the health department that has programs to reduce teen pregnancy. We pay dollars for that. Can they show any statistics where teen pregnancy has been reduced? If not, cancel that program. Health department has programs where they go out into the public and try to convince people not to use drugs. If we cannot show that drug usage is decreasing because of us spending that money, then quit spending that money. We need to demand results from the money that we invest through various departments. And if they can't show positive results, end the program. Keep the money for something else. We need to look at all kinds of things, and I can come up with other properties we should sell. But that's my initial comment. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple thoughts there. One, yeah, we can sell assets, but those are one-time monies. We don't have a one-time problem. We have an annual problem. And that annual problem right now for 25, 26, it's probably going to be $1.5 million. So I'm not in favor of selling assets just to fix a one-time problem. We need operational dollars. And as far as the health department, as I indicated earlier, we already give the health department the minimum legal requirement, meaning we have to give them this much money. And for all those programs, the health department spends millions, but it's not our money. It's state and federal money. It's grant money that comes in. They spend, like I say, I don't remember the exact number, but it's a few $100,000 of our tax dollars. Otherwise, it's the tax dollars that we send to the Washington and Lansing that come back to us. And if they don't come back to us, they're just going somewhere else. We have people who have needs in our community. I would hate to end those programs with under the premise that somehow we're going to save ourselves dollars, because we would not.
Commissioners, Commissioner Walls.
Thank you. One of the things that has kind of weighed really heavy on my heart since this has happened is the thought that we would possibly be hiring someone into a position, and then 2025 come along and us not be able to fund that position. It would be my recommendation at this time to actually put, I don't want to say a hiring freeze, but a moratorium of sorts, and only hire absolutely necessary positions at this time until we figure this out. Looking into my history as a manager, I know that there are positions that we absolutely cannot do without. There are positions that are grant funded that have to be rehired. There are positions that maybe we don't need, or we may be looking at cutting in the future. So at this time, it's of my opinion that perhaps we need to look at each and every position that is currently not filled before we fill it, and make sure that it's vetted properly before we put someone in there and then 3 or 4 months down the road have to lay them off.
If I may, yeah, I hear you and agree with you. To be frank, our budget actually is in a better position right now than one would think based on the actual budgeted dollars, because we are very short-staffed in a lot of areas. I know the sheriff is down 10, a dozen staff members. JDOT is down, I think, almost 16 to 19. You know, you run through the county, we're missing a lot of employees across the county. On one hand, that saves us dollars. On the other hand, it takes us a lot longer to get a pothole filled and things like that. And, you know, obviously, we're trying to hire folks. Some of that is our wages haven't kept up. And that's why I'm not necessarily predicting anything other than some significant wage increases coming up in our union contract negotiations. And rightfully so. People need to be compensated or we can't hire. And that's part of our problem. I think we're down 5 mechanics alone of our 9 in JDOT, 4 or 5. And it really comes down to wages and things. And you can't blame people. You know, if they can make more money somewhere else to feed their family and take care of kids and such, they should. We have to do a better job at these things. And unfortunately, if the voters aren't willing to give us the dollars to do it, we have to decide what we're not going to do. That's unfortunate, but it is what it is at the end of the day. Because I've heard people say, well, let's just cut 10% across the board. You know, we can get to where we need to be. Well, that's easy said. But again, some of our departments are a department of one or a department of two. I mean, how do you cut 10% of 2 people in veterans? Do I make one part-time? I go to them just because they're easy to think of there. No, it's not an easy thing to do. We've cut paperclip money. We don't have office supplies that are going to make this up. It's programs and things like that we do. So I wish there were easier answers, but at this time there are not.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to address, there was a question earlier. I'm sorry I forgot your name, ma'am, but about the empty prison. And I just want you to know that the Jail Ad Hoc Committee did explore that option. And Sheriff Schutte can probably give you a better description than I. But what it really came down to is law in Michigan, what we were told from MDOC, that even if the buildings are separate, if they're on the same property, you can't house convicted felons with people who haven't faced their day in jail yet. It's illegal to do that. So the state's not willing to do that. We would have loved to do that, but unfortunately, that's not a viable option. The next thing, I just want to make it clear, because I thought the sheriff did a tremendous job of being out in the community. I thought there was information and pamphlets. I know I talked on the news. I know Chairman Shotwell talked on the news. And I want people to understand that this $1.25 to $1.5 million, that was in our budget for 20 years. There was a millage that everyone in this room, including the commissioners here, were paying on, okay? When you lose that money, I know there's some gentlemen out here that think we're just up here wasting all kinds of money and there's frivolous programs. You'd be surprised. And I hope one day you're in this chair and you can look at it and see the reality of it is. The reality is, when you lose $1.5 to $1.25 million and the community's not willing to fund it, you have to cut your budget. There's no magic. We can get grants. We can do this. I've heard all kinds of stuff like that. It's not true. A lot of the misinformation is probably why the millage failed, to be honest. So I want to make that clear. That funding was literally in our budget for 20 years. When it's gone like that, you've got to react. Beyond that, the chairman, myself, Mr. Overton, we have sat down and looked at the general fund budget, and we have looked at other programs that could take slight cuts to reduce the burden to the sheriff. I myself do not support cutting the sheriff at all, especially what's going on in Jackson right now. We hear about shootings all the time. So the last thing I'd want to do is take officers off the road. And I think the majority of this board feels that way too. So this proposal's on here to basically give the citizens the option to renew that funding that took place for 20 years. That's what it is. Hopefully, the majority of this board agrees to put it on the ballot. I know I'm going to support it, and hopefully the public supports it. If not, we'll make budget cuts, and we're prepared to do so. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams, then Commissioner Pileski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So some of what I was going to speak to has already been addressed. One thing I will say that I do agree with Commissioner Waltz in terms of our hiring practices currently. And then also just to speak to the idea of cuts, you Mr. Overton, you made it very clear in regards to what we can and what we cannot do. But I'm wondering if there's a way where we can create a document that lists what we can cut and what we cannot cut for the community's purposes, so that there's a clear picture on really what we can do, because there's the conversations that I've had with individuals after the result of the millage was just, as was kind of already stated, we'll just cut this, cut that, and it's hard to explain a lot of times what we can and cannot do. So I'm wondering if there's a graphic of sorts that we could create to help facilitate that conversation.
Actually, yes. I've got a few different documents that we've been putting together and talking about that graphically show, one, where the money goes, and separating mandated versus non-mandated, and things that where we have some flexibility to make reductions and their impact on the general fund, which is where the Sheriff's Department's funded out of. And you're correct, people don't understand. Heck, sometimes we don't understand. Government funding, government spending, government budgeting is very different than how you have it at home. Most of us operate it. We have a checking, a savings account. We take money, we move it around, and so forth and so on. We can buy a car, we can buy groceries, we can do what we want with that money. Government funding is not like that. I get people all the time, how come you're spending money on a roundabout when there's potholes? You should fix the potholes. I very much agree. Oh, I like roundabouts. Roundabouts. No, I do not like potholes. But the truth is, the federal government, state government, our tax dollars go there. They send dollars back, be it to cities and villages and counties and so forth. And they put strings on it. They say, hey, we're going to give you $1 million. It can only be used on roundabouts. So while we just got $1 million, and that might make a splash in the paper or social media that we have $1 million, we can't use that money for anything but roundabouts. Now, I could say, well, we're not going to do roundabouts, and we don't want that money. But we generally don't turn money away if they're giving it to us. That's a romantic notion, but that's really not the reality. And it's true of a lot of things. I know the prosecutor just received more money, and things like that. But it's earmarked for the prosecutor's office. We don't have control to just move it around as we would at our homes. So the answer is it's difficult, but we do have the graphics to show what you can or cannot do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing further at this time.
Before Commissioner Pileski is to speak, I'm going to ask commissioners to look at the September 5th, 2023 study session. It has the 2024-25 proposed budget and answers all your questions, Commissioner Williams. That document is available online for the public to review in a downloadable PDF format, and it shows public safety occupying over 27% of the general fund budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this discussion and what we've had to go through in the past, 2 years ago and then just recently, illustrates the weakness we have here in Michigan for local government funding. One of the very few things that local governments have to raise funds is property taxes. And people hate property taxes. You pay them twice a year. They're based on a valuation that people don't necessarily trust. And everybody is looking for revenue, and not incidentally, the county looks for revenue in that way. And it is true that we have the senior millage and the animal shelter millage and mental health and medical care facility. All of those are go for good purposes. We also have a unexpiring general county millage, and it's, I think, roughly, these are rough figures, roughly 6 mills. But the Headley limitations have taken that down to about 5.1 mills. In my view, there is no more fundamental thing that we do in the county government than to run the county jail and public safety. And it seems to me that if you're going to operate a fundamental government function, it should be part of your fundamental, basic, general operating millage, okay? And so to put a 0.25 mil on the ballot to run one of your most fundamental functions, I scratch my head over that, okay? I don't think that's a great idea. And strategically, I think we should be looking at whether a Headley override is called for with respect to our general operating millage. That not being the case right now, I am prepared to give county voters one more chance to consider this in November, hold my nose, and vote for the 0.25 mil proposal. And I hope that we are more successful and more energetic in educating the voters on the implications of its failure. And so thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to make my view on the position known.
Commissioner Duckham?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing I'd like to preface all this discussion with this morning on the millage that failed and how to finance the jail is let's not point fingers at each other. I can think of different ways that we should have maybe approached the millage situation. And I don't want to point fingers, and I just thought of it recently, is we should have went for a $500,000 renewal. And then that would have replaced what was expiring. People generally will vote for a renewal and then ask for the 25% increase to build a new jail, or 0.4 increase. Because really, we weren't asking for a 0.9 mil increase. Half of it was 5.5 of it people were already paying. We were going for a 0.4 mil increase. And that's all. That's why I say don't point fingers at each other, and I'm not blaming anybody, but I think maybe we could have maybe done a better job, and maybe we couldn't have. Maybe there's a way, some state law or statute that won't let us do it that way, but I think that would have helped. I would say something that probably won't be hugely popular. Road patrol. You know, if we didn't have road patrol, we could have a jail, but then again, how are the people going to get to jail? I did a map of the county, and we have standalone departments like Blackman, Leone, Columbia, Napoleon, City of Jackson, Spring Arbor Township. We have contracted townships with Norville Township, Grass Lake Township, Hanover Township, Summit Township. And I get a little confused. I know these contracts come up, and that leaves Sandstone, Henrietta, Liberty, maybe Pulaski, maybe Concord, and maybe Rise without a road patrol. My concern is everybody having some sort of quick response, like a contracted service. Norville Township has their own contracted officer in car, and people get to see the car and they get to talk to an officer to make a complaint. We've got about 5 townships that have not joined in with their own force or contract with the sheriff. They could get state police response if we aided road patrol, but maybe if we get a hold of the townships and say, hey, look, it could end. Do you want in? And I'm shooting myself in the foot here because some of the townships I represent ask them to pay for the car and the officer, just like a contracted township does now. It would give us probably 25% of what we need. I don't know. This is a tough situation. Like Mr. Overton said, we've got buckets of money, but that money has to be spent for what we got the grant for, what the federal funding came in for. And we can't shuffle around. The shuffle around money that we could manage really comes out of the 5.1 mil, like Commissioner Plesky said. So I don't know if we could get a Headley override. The Headley amendment was enacted, as I understand it, to help control the spending of government, because as government spent, property taxes went up and people couldn't afford to live in their homes. So we put this cap on there. And it's come back to bite us, I guess. And every time we ask for a mill increase on this project or that project, we really are going around the stated wishes of the people by holding our growth down. But it was voted on a long time ago, and it maybe isn't the best thing we ever enacted, because it's really got our hands tied behind our backs right now. I don't know if we could get a Headley override. An advantage of a Headley override would be the money, we could get the $250,000 we need for the jail operation. We still have .65 left. And that could be spent on any other emergency situation. Or we'd find a way to spend it. I mean, we've got a lot of departments short on staff. And we don't have a lot of road money, and maybe we could take this .65 mil by passing the Headley override and use it wherever we need it. But we would have the jail operation millage out of that. The .9 we would gain over the Headley restricted funding, or millage assessment the county gets. It's just a lot of ways to do it. You got to decide the right way. And I'm not sure there's a best way here. Thank you.
Commissioner Willis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to say, I think Commissioner Pileski must have been reading my mind sitting here, but we have a situation that, as he iterated, where we have a mandate that we're required to do as commissioners in terms of operating the jail facility. Our sheriff and the members of the team, Amy and those, have done a phenomenal job in getting some information out. I think one of the missing pieces, though, is that people don't understand, and a common misconception with government is that we have like extra people just standing around the departments with nothing to do. If you visit these departments in the county, you'll understand that a lot of our departments are operating with the bare minimum staff that they need to get through. A lot of them are still looking to have people to come in to staff those bare minimums that they need. We're in a situation where we have a jail mandate we're mandated to do. We're going to fall short about $1.5 million. So where do you find those dollars? Just cutting and eliminating necessary staff is not going to provide what we need on a consistent basis. And in fact, it's just going to put us in a more harmful situation. So I think we have to look at what's available to us, look at the situation that we're in. Nobody that I know that sits in any of these capacities desires to just throw out taxes, just to ask for more money. That's not the goal, but we do have a mandate. And I think we do have to get that message out to the public, like, listen, this is the alternative. If we don't fund this, how are we going to support the mandates that we have? How will the sheriff's office operate? How will the facility that we have that's ages and ages old continue to function? So we have to look at what the realistic view of what it's going to cost us, and do we have people that we can just take their jobs away to fulfill this mandate when they're already operating at a bare minimum? So it's not an easy choice, but I think it's clear before us what the option is. As Earl said, I think at this point, we do have to plug our nose and say, hey, we need to get this .25 to a vote, and we need to get the message out so that people understand that this is a mandate we have to carry out, and we have to be able to support the people that need that support. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all we have.
Commissioner Snell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a lot to consider here. I think one of the things we haven't talked about is what else is going to be on the ballot. I know Blackman Township will have a public safety renewal at 2 mills. Library will be on the ballot for their renewal. We have until tomorrow at 4 o'clock to see if schools or other townships are going to be additional millages, requests. But there's just no good time to ask for more millage. But we're in a situation where as other commissioners have already talked about, that I'm not sure we're left with any other choice but to put this on the ballot. I have had some conversations with constituents this weekend, well, 4 calls. This is the most calls I've ever got on any issue, and it was split 2-2. 2 yes, 2 no, don't do this. I kind of agree with Earl that the Headley override needs to be addressed at some times. I don't know how much more we can cut out of that budget. I know we've talked about things and what could be cut, what can't be cut. And the fact of the matter is we have a mandate, and we've talked about mandates, to have a jail. We must have a jail. If we don't get the 1.5 million that department needs, I'm not sure we don't have any other choice but to cut some of the sheriff's department road patrol. I don't know what else we could do. So I hope that the public understands why we're going to most likely vote to put this ballot or put this issue on the ballot. I'm not sure we have any other choice. Thank you.
Commissioner Bear.
Thank you, Chairman. It happens way too often that I make a recommendation or a statement, and then one individual has to contradict it or distort it. Aggravates every time it has been done, and it still aggravates me. I don't need these personal attacks. The counter to my consideration of selling the airport, I talked about the forever income or property taxes that we will receive year after year after year. And the counter is, well, I don't want to have a one-time revenue source. Like that detracts from my statement that we're going to have property taxes forever. I didn't even mention the sale price for the airport. All I talked about was the generated income year after year after year. And you mentioned the one-time revenue source. That's additional. That's even another reason to go ahead and sell the airport. We've had a lot of conversations here. Tell me whatever other recommendation is going to generate money perpetually for our county. I guess I don't recollect hearing one. I'm in support of asking the taxpayers to approve a 0.25 mil operating millage. Yes, let's ask. What are the odds of it passing? They've turned down 2 previous millage requests, so I'm not real confident it will pass. If it doesn't, then we need more suggestions like similar to mine. If you don't like mine, what's your suggestion? How are we going to increase our revenues? I have a solution. So, yeah, I'll support the millage request.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Just one question in regard to the airport, so I'm clear. I'm pretty sure I understand it. The privately rented or owned hangars on the airport are paying property taxes. Am I correct, Mr. Overton?
On the assets they own.
Okay. Thank you.
So, any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Duckham.
Mr. Chair, my general government meeting should be starting in a couple minutes, but I offer to move that time back to further the discussion here. If we don't put the millage on the ballot, and I hate putting millages on ballots, if we don't do it, though, we're just eliminating jobs. So there's going to have to be cuts if we don't do it. So we at least have to ask to maintain our employees' count and keep the county moving. So my vote is we have to put it on there. I don't like it, but, you know, if we don't, we're just automatically throwing jobs away. I see it. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Pileski.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think the question of whether to sell the airport is deserving of an answer.
I was going to give that.
Well, let me offer my suggestion and then see whether it squares with your own, sir. If we were to sell the airport, let's say for $2 million, that would be a $1 million taxable value. At the 5.1 millage the county currently collects, that would generate to the county annually forever $5,100. Okay, that's 1/300th of what we have to figure out with respect to this operating millage. So I think that is, I hope that's the correct answer. My math is right and I haven't dropped any zeros. But I think that is a response to the concept of selling county assets to generate county operating millage. Thank you.
So the community is aware. The Jackson County, while we run and operate Reynolds Field on Wildwood Avenue and maintain its services, we received that property from a previous owner. And that previous owner was the city of Jackson. There are reverter clauses that are in all of these documents, and then there's also leasehold paybacks to the federal government if you attempt to sell properties that they have given municipal monies to either enhance or improve. So upon the sale of the airport, it's not a simple project of finding someone to give us $1 million or $2 million for that piece of ground, and all of a sudden it becomes this enterprise fund through taxation. The other thing that comes into play is that in 2008 and 9, an LDFA was laid over it. So now you're going to restrict the amount of money that can be collected by the county because you're going to have to give the difference in value from when you purchased the property to the LDFA. So now we're reducing that amount of money again. So the answer to sell the airport, while a wonderful idea and thought of as a brilliant way for us to see increased tax revenue, even if it be $5,100 a year, unfortunately, a lot of that $5,100 would be then divided up among other entities and organizations because of the other projects that have been laid over it. You have to remember that it's a brownfield, because we also had to clean up a dump that had to have items transported away, and the only reason why we were able to do what we did out there was because we agreed to maintain it as a municipal airport with the Federal Aviation. So there are many other things that come into play when it comes to selling the airport. The big issue that we have, I think, is the open positions. I give the sheriff credit for protecting us as well as he has the last 2 years, with his force slowly being depleted. He's at a reduced staff right now only because we can't find employees that are able to come and work for us. And when we do get them, that has a tendency of training them and then moving on to a different job or a better opportunity that the sheriff he's been dealing with that. When it comes to the health department and cutting programs at the health department, in 2008 and 9, when Commissioner Pileski and I served under Randy Treacher as administrator, we went through and cut over 32 different positions in Jackson County. And that reduction was done over 3 years. What it did do, though, that we didn't realize at the time when we reduced our health department by +6 people and got rid of programs, was that the per capita money coming into Jackson County through the health department, through the state of Michigan, because of that employee reduction occurred. So all of a sudden while we reduced our overall cost of employees, and initially we saw a savings, what occurred is we saw having to go back and figure out how either to reinsert the program or find someone else who's willing to help us do it or to help run those programs. So our health department right now is at a plus minus net zero with our operation. So there really isn't anything we can remove. We've been short one environmental health inspector for over a year and a half, and I believe the restaurants have been fairly upset with us on our inability to get in and get their health inspections done, so that way they can be open. So that's where the difficulty comes as we reduce stuff. We've just recently got our IT department and that staff to the functional level that it needs to take care of 700 employees in Jackson County. That includes the road department, but you're dealing with all the different organizations that our 6, maybe 8 IT people have to maintain and take care of. And when we have any kind of issues or that type of stuff, this team steps up and makes sure that we have IT support, and have had to do a lot of things behind the scenes that we aren't aware of that an IT department has had to do. Question of the $2 million surplus. The $2 million surplus occurred because you collected the tax revenue for the previous jail in December. So that would mean the surplus would have to carry forward to the next year. So that would mean that if the last year you collected the millage was 2022, you would carry it through to 2023. So then you would use that money to help us get us through this year, 2024. And so now that revenue is gone. That surplus is gone. So the other side of that everyone who's been involved in local government, but not at the depth of a lot of commissioners, is that the county board and the county of Jackson proper has to be the last point of tax collection, and then it also has to make everyone whole in September. So on September 30th, we have to make all the townships whole. Now, that means that anybody who hasn't paid their property taxes or hasn't collected their fees or anyone delinquent in that program, the treasurer has to then go out and collect those fees over that time period and get that money back. And then also, our cash flow per month is what, Mike? About $2.5 million from what I looked at, yeah, to run the operation. So that means if we're giving out tax dollars to all the townships to make them whole, to operate in their first quarter of the year, we're having to have a reserve to be able to make our payrolls and be able to do the things that we do here within the county to make sure it functions properly. And then at the end of the day, when it comes to the last person who has to make sure schools and townships and sewer funds are making their payments on bonds, as you've seen with what we had to do with the Southern Interceptor, the county has to step in and make those payments. So we need to have a surplus carry through the year of about 20%. That means we need about $8.5 million in our surplus fund to make sure that the county holds the proper amount of cash to make sure everyone else can function and operate. So that's where that surplus comes from that everybody wants us to spend down. Okay, it has to be carried through. Now we could do this. We could choose to spend down the surplus and build the jail and have everything done and function on a zero budget, where we have no surplus dollars and no extra money at the county. Our credit rating will go down, and so then school districts and townships and municipalities will have to pay greater dollars for their borrowing capacity, and the county then would have to issue what are called bond anticipation notes tax, which means that we're going to end up borrowing money, creating a credit card to carry forward. Whereas right now, we have the surplus. We carry that $8.5 to $9 million in surplus that we use to maintain the general fund. So that's why we're at where we're at. The largest fund right now in the county that the general fund has to pay for is public safety. And with that, we are responsible to the community to be the leaders in the public safety realm. We have to operate a jail, we have to maintain sheriff deputies. And the expected serviceable idea behind that, what people expect is what we've gotten in the past. It doesn't mean we can't cut stuff. It means we can't do things differently. But we've had programs where we've had to say, okay, is a phone call at the end of the day, or is an email by the end of the week an appropriate response to somebody when we're dealing with issues? And that's the question that we as commissioners are gonna wrestle with. I support putting this ballot initiative back on the ballot in November, and I believe that the Board of Commissioners are gonna support this, but this is a tough decision. It's not like we sit around looking for a huge windfall that we're not able to get. We are working diligently within the parameters that the state government and the Michigan Constitution makes us operate in. And that's where the hamstring or tying the shoes together that we have, laces together, of what we have to deal with. And I really give these 8 other fellow commissioners, because I know you're not sleeping at night when we're dealing with stuff like this, and making sure that we're able to provide a secure and safe and economically developable county. And on that, I'll look for a motion. Commissioner Mayor.
I move to approve the millage request for the jail operations millage as presented previously.
Support.
I have a motion and support. Questions?
Just a point of clarification.
Commissioner Kennedy.
It appears this is going to be a 10-year request rather than a 20, which the jail millage, the previous jail millage that did pass years ago, and then the last one that was just defeated. So it's going to be a 10-year request for operations instead of 20, correct?
Correct.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Chairman Walls? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Walls?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Duckham?
Yes.
Commissioner Poleski?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Snell?
Yes.
Chairman Shotwell?
Gotta get Commissioner Bear.
Oh, Commissioner Bear?
Yes.
Chairman Shotwell?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners.
If I may.
Nope, no, go ahead.
I would just thank the board for moving this forward. What will happen now, though, is we will not seek to, let's put it this way, this is my opinion, you guys decide what we're going to do, but I would not recommend that we seek to approve the full budget in September as we normally do. I would hope to approve the things that the state requires us to approve, meaning the state budgeted items. So friend of the court, health department, because they're on a state funding fiscal year. So there's roughly, and I think public defender as well, there's like 3 budgets we need to approve in September. And the reason I say that is because I do not want to, well, there's a number of reasons, but one, we don't want to approve a budget that with cuts that we may not need to make, nor do we want to approve a budget without cuts that we may have to cut. We do not have to approve our budget until December, frankly. It needs to be approved before the new year begins in January. So I propose that we would put together the budgets that we have that need to be approved in September, because they start October 1 with the state's year. And then the remaining budgets, we'll wait and see how the millage fares, and then approve the budget in November, likely approve it in December, would be my proposal. And I don't necessarily.
What's that? Yes, sir. Where are we on the agenda? We are under other items, sir. Item 6A. Item 6A. The administrator controller is sharing information with you. Do you not want to hear it?
If I may. At any rate, we don't need to do anything at this time, but thank you.
Public comment.
Good morning, Commissioners. Wow, sorry about that. I think it's important, I appreciate the vote and getting this out in front of the public, but I think it's important for you all to know, I think most of you probably do, but also for public consumption, just exactly what cuts would mean. And I want to put a fine point on that real quickly. So there's been a lot of talk about elimination of road patrol here with the sheriff's office, and I want you to know what that looks like. So right now, we put out 3 deputies at night, 3, and 1 supervisor. That's terrifying to me. When I learned of that, when I first became sheriff, I thought, are you kidding me? I was used to a situation where we put out 6. The reason why that's so important for everyone to understand, and there was some explanation about township departments, city departments, and things of that nature of police officers that are out there. Well, that is true. However, many of those departments are not 24 hours. For instance, we have Napoleon Township. They're not 24 hours. Who do you think backs that up when they go home? It's us. There's the one department that puts out, and I don't want to single out departments. There's one department that puts out just 1 police officer at night. Who's their backup? That's us. There's a couple of departments that are public safety. When they have a big fire, they have a big rescue call, traffic accident, and they're all tied up. Who handles the calls in that department? That's us. We do it. And we have to do it. There's actually statutes on point that say that I have to do that. Now, there's nothing specifically in the law that says that I have to maintain a full-time patrol operations. I'll grant you that. There's nothing in there that says that. But there are things in there that do mandate that I take care of the citizens and protect and preserve public safety. What that looks like is essentially up to us locally. So any further cuts would likely eliminate a road patrol division on the night shift. Now, I'd have to do some research to make a determination as to what that would look like. So I'm not going to say that's absolute. But some of the other things that I think about when this topic brings up is, and I think it's logical to go here, is the elimination of Channer Road in and of itself. The operation costs were for Channer Road. So it's logical to kind of think of that as well. Neither one of those are places I want to go. I mean, we are right at the borderline right now of, chaos, frankly. And I don't mean to cause a public outcry of what's going on, but it's really important to understand just right where we're at. And I'm not sure that publicly everyone understands that. And it's critically important to understand that there's so much misinformation out there about how we do things and how we're funded. And we need to learn, I think, how to combat that a little bit better. When I looked at all of the comments and all of the questions that came through during the public safety campaign, which I think we did, well, I know that we spent many, many countless days in a row working on it.
I apologize, but you need to wrap it up.
I will absolutely wrap it up. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we got to do a better job of projecting out the problems that we have and why this is the fix. Because if we don't, it won't pass again. This was the one thing that I saw, it's like going back to that held us up on passing the last millage. Lots of questions as to why is operating costs a part of this. So we need to do a better job. Thank you.
Okay, public comment is supposed to be 2 minutes right now, just so you know, sir.
Well, you guys exposed that I'm way overpaying in taxes because I'm paying over $7,000 on a 9-unit down the road here, and I could be paying $5,000 in taxes on the airport. So I think I'm going to buy the airport. So, anyways, I wonder how, like, we can't change it now, but I wonder how well we did at like the thing about the parks that was voted on in the city. I couldn't vote on it, but I wonder how well we explained to the citizens that what's important, these parks or the sheriff's department, you know. So I don't know that we did that good of a job on that. I shake my head. I drive around town for my business every day, and I shake my head every time I go by a park. And just think about the money that we're putting into these parks, and then I see them vacant and whatever. So, other than that, I just wanted to thank you guys for what you do. And I wasn't attacking you guys or anything about frivolous programs and stuff like that. I know that you guys have done a good job. I've followed Mr. Pulaski since he was in Spring Arbor, came here. And I've heard about, you guys operating under budget, and I really, really appreciate that. And I know that you guys are doing that job and doing it well, and I really appreciate that. It's my fault that I'm not informed on, the programs that you guys send money to. I've never looked at those programs. I've never looked at a list. So my assumption comes from the federal government. I've looked at the federal government list, and I'm highly appalled. So anyways, so that assumption rolled over onto you guys, and I apologize for that.
Please forgive me. These are probably some very stupid questions. But I just want to, as I've been sitting here, just want to throw these back out to you. I know you can't answer questions to me, but I'm hoping you would take some notes. I would really welcome, most of you are aware, I have email lists, I have massive reach throughout the county. And the majority of citizens had no idea this was happening today. If we had let them know of what was at stake, you would have had a ton of people in the audience. What my hope is that, along with one of the commissioners that mentioned it, is that we are communicating more clearly with the voters. And I think what you'll find as you listen to some of the feedback from people, they don't know what they don't know. They don't even know the questions to ask. So I would affirm, Mr. Overton, if there is any way that like a memo can be done that is saying, here are all the ways the money can't be used, or here are all the ways, here are all the questions, a Q&A. Here are the questions being asked. Why can't you use this facility? Here's the answer. Here's this question. Here's the answer. I'd be happy to supply you with some of the general questions. But here are some of my questions to you. Why was a 0.9, why was the millage that just failed not revisited for this November? I'm not sure it was the best idea. I am not excited about promoting a 0.25 millage for Chanter. Here's one of the other questions. How are we as a county preparing for the lawsuits that are coming? The longer Wesley stays open, I really do believe it is the hand of God that has protected this county without having
30 seconds.
more millages. I would like to know an analysis from commissioners, what worked and what didn't. Why was this not planned for the last 20 years, and how are we planning on things further? And I would love to know, what is the analysis? Are you asking voters of what they did and did not want? I am not sure that a millage, a 0.25 millage will pass in November. Thank you.
Sheriff Schutte, Under Sheriff Simpson, Captain Stewart, it is not your fault.
Commissioner, John, you're speaking to the Board of Commissioners,
Yes.
not
Okay.
to them.
It's not the fault of the sheriff, Under Sheriff Captain Stewart, that they're in the position that they are. It is your faults, right up here, starting with you. And now you want to override Headley, Ray, Earl? Wow. Override Headley. Misinformation? What misinformation? Maybe you can expound on that during commissioner comments. Sheriff Schutte and his staff did a standout job. The millage. I was not in favor of the millage because it was 0.9. 2 years ago, when that last millage expired, I spoke to Sheriff Schutte. I spoke in front of the commission here, saying, just put another 0.5 on the ballot. It would have passed. It would have passed. Now, would that have been enough for everything, for each and every jail upgrade necessary? I don't know. But what the fault is of each and every one of you is that the fact you have not received or gotten any money from Lansing. Other counties have for their jails. Why hasn't Jackson County? Maybe you can also, talk about that in your commissioner comments. There's money available for jails
30
in Lansing.
seconds.
You failed. Each one of you failed for not getting that money. Now you want to come to us. 0.25, I can afford it. I'll vote for it. But it's not going to solve the problem. Now you want millages so you can have budget surpluses. Budget surpluses that add up, and up, that you can then spend on other parts of the county spending, okay?
Time's up, sir.
All right, thank you. But anyways, thank you, Mr. Shotwell. See you at the Y.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mike Way, Summit Township, and also a member of the Jackson County Parks Department. Just a little piece of information on one of the comments. The Parks Department, the Jackson County Parks, I'm not sure how the city funds, but the Jackson County Parks have their own millage and receives no general fund dollars. So I do support your motion that passed earlier today, and I'd be happy to be out there pounding the doors for you. Thank you for everything you do.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Public comment is now.
Aye.